Today on Upfront, budget battles, budget deals.
This is a good deal for lawmakers anywhere in the state.
Next, the arena, prevailing wage, and road wars. What's next in these budget showdowns? Assembly Speaker Robin Vos joins us. Plus, split-second decisions.
One day, something goes horribly wrong.
The harsh reality of police work. Why would these men and women want to be cops? Meet the next generation pledging to protect and serve. And political strategist David Axelrod on his former boss, President Obama, Hillary Clinton's potential Achilles heel, and what voters outside Wisconsin want to know about Governor Walker.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Upfront with Mike Goucher.
Hello and welcome to Upfront. Take a look at this. It's something you don't see very often. Leaders from across the state and both political parties standing shoulder to shoulder touting a hard-won agreement on just how much money to spend on a new arena for the Milwaukee Bucks and who will pay for it. Governor Walker took the lead, saying the price of doing nothing was not zero. He said the state could lose more than $400 million over the next 20 years if the Bucks leave. Assembly Speaker Robin Vos noted the presence of the governor and Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett at the announcement.
I actually watched the gubernatorial debates between Governor Walker and Tom Barrett, so I know that they don't agree on a lot of things.
And Speaker Vos joins me now to talk about the arena and the other big budget issues yet to be decided. Speaker, it's good to have you back on the program.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I enjoy it.
Well, how much persuading do you have to do in the next week or so on this arena deal?
I think we've got a way to go. Governor Walker and the county executive, the mayor, Senator Fitzgerald, and I think have put together a pretty good deal. I think that there are always areas where people can look and criticize, but I think when you look at the totality of it, it's important from my perspective as a state lawmaker to say, how do we get the best deal possible protecting the taxpayers, but also doing things that help our economy grow. When you look at this deal, basically it's taking $6.5 million in revenue that we bring in from the players who play in Wisconsin right now for the Bucks. That number is going to grow over time because of new NBA contracts, and we're committing $4 million of that $6.5 million toward a brand new arena that will help keep the Bucks here for 41 nights, but also the Admirals and hopefully Marquette and the opportunity for concerts. So I look at this and think just from a purely financial standpoint, it's hard to argue with the merits of saying you'd spend $4 million to get $6.5.
But you would acknowledge that convincing your caucus, your assembly members, of that argument is going to be a tough task.
It's definitely challenging because there's a lot of politics. You know, people still have a bad taste in their mouth about Miller Park. We know that in the proposal for Miller Park and Lambeau, they were both brand new taxes, no new taxes in this proposal. So we've caucused on this in the Assembly several times. I think overall people have been comfortable with this is a better deal than the one Governor Walker originally put on the table. Negotiations usually produce that. But I think at the end of the day, it's still a hard sell. One of the things that we really need to see step up, hopefully, are my colleagues in the Assembly on the Democratic side, and the same thing in the state Senate. We know that a lot of people who represent Milwaukee, Democrats who want to see the city grow and thrive, like Mayor Barrett and County Executive Abley, so hopefully we'll be able to have a mix of lots of good people standing up and doing something that's right.
That sounds like it's going to be outside the budget. Is this ultimately going to be taken out of the budget and decided alone?
You know, we haven't made that decision yet. It sounds like the early discussions are the Senate will probably go first. They're probably going to take the budget up first. I think Senator Farrow offered a good idea to potentially say an amendment to the budget so you could have a standalone vote attracting Democrat votes. The possibility exists to take it outside, but we know we don't have a ton of time. The legislature adjourns basically at the end of June. The budget has to get finished, and at the same time, we need to either tell the Bucks we're going to put a deal together so they can stay, or they're going to begin looking for real estate at one of those arenas in Seattle or Las Vegas.
If this is a separate amendment or it's taken outside the budget, don't you think it's likely that Republican votes will simply melt away? What would be the impetus for people, Republicans who are going to be running for re-election someday, to say, I voted for this arena deal?
You know, it does have political prices, and that's where I want to be totally upfront. We've been upfront with our caucus, and that's why the issue really isn't about the Bucks. It's not about Milwaukee. It's about the state of Wisconsin's budget. You know, we're not raising taxes at the state level, so we have to look for every possible economic opportunity to grow the pie that we already have. We know that we have $6.5 million in revenue right now today. If the Bucks stay, that number is guaranteed to increase over time because of the new players' salaries contracts. So why wouldn't we want to keep more revenue in the state for a small investment, which is really what it is. And sometimes people talk about this $250 million number. Well, that's the total number over 20 years. It's really $4 million a year out of a budget that is, 65, 70 billion dollars. A big number, not one that we don't want to say isn't important, but at the same point, it's about an investment to get money back.
Very briefly, in the past, you have said you're very optimistic this deal will get done. Describe your level of optimism right now.
I am optimistic. I'm not very optimistic. I think that we wanted to take some time to lay out the plan, which is what's really happening on shows like yours and all across the state. Hopefully, when taxpayers see that this is really a benefit to them, no matter where they live in the state, they're going to look and say, you know what, I might not like giving money to billionaires, but it's really about preserving the revenue to spend on schools and tax cuts and the university and everything else.
I wanted to ask you a quick question about prevailing wage. There are people in your caucus who want the prevailing wage law repealed. You've talked about reforms. Is that going to be in the budget?
I hope so. I mean, I
hope
always,
it's in the budget.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I have always been a supporter of repeal. I sponsored the bill in 2011. I voted for it before. So I certainly am somebody who wants to get the best possible deal. But even this week, you saw Senator Strobel come out saying we might not get a full repeal, but he's willing to take the most that he can get. He's laid down a marker of where he is. I think we're trying to get to that point. So I am working on a regular basis with the state Senate to try to find an answer that gets as close to full repeal as we can. But I'm also not willing to say it's either everything or nothing. I think it's better to make serious progress and get substantial reforms than to walk away without any.
Let's talk about the state transportation budget, which is fascinating. The governor's proposed $1.3 billion in borrowing, but he says he's not going to sign off on a tax increase. He's not going to sign off on a vehicle registration fee increase. And you've said in response, well, maybe we shouldn't do any borrowing or bonding. Friday we learned that the governor said he would sign a budget that didn't have any borrowing whatsoever. Are you surprised by that?
Well, I was a little surprised, only from the standpoint that our transportation fund, of course, we passed the amendment to wall it off, so it now has a guarantee that transportation dollars are spent on roads and bridges and transportation. But we know that there's a structural imbalance. It's about $800 million that we are borrowing and spending on a regular basis without new revenues coming in. Well, at some point, your credit card's maxed out. You can't do any more. So when Governor Walker proposed $1.3 billion borrowing, I just think that's irresponsible. I think it's way too high. So I have proposed...
What would be a reasonable amount?
Well, I'd prefer to pay as we go. I think that's a conservative position, not borrowing and spending. It's actually paying for what you believe in. So we proposed a small registration fee increase that would still only pay a portion of that deficit, and the rest would be with cuts. I think that's the most responsible, a combination of, a small registration fee increase, $25 or something, and at the same time, a big reduction in borrowing so that we can have a right sizing of the transportation fund. Well, now it seems like if revenues are off the table and we're entirely relying on bonding, that's really irresponsible. So we definitely have to have a cut in the bonding. Maybe a 100% cut would be difficult in the short run, but it might be the answer that we have to have if we're never going to raise revenues to add more into the transportation fund.
And what would that cut mean to road projects around the state, major road projects?
Well, my colleague John Nygren had a study done by the Fiscal Bureau that shows just a $500 million reduction, 88% of that would fall in outstate Wisconsin. So if there are road projects anywhere around the state, we're talking about a serious reduction in funding. But the question really comes down to it that we could hobble along for another couple of years, do Governor Walker's plan to borrow all this money, but eventually our credit card is maxed out and we are going to have a big, hard decision with very few options. I would rather have an adult conversation now about what the appropriate level of spending is. Do we need to have roads? I think we do. I think they are the way to grow our economy, but it seems like we can't quite get that common sense answer in the middle, so hopefully we will. I mean, hopefully it won't be a total reduction in bonding, but it might be the answer.
Got a lot on your plate in the next few weeks.
A lot going on.
Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, thanks very much for being with us. What deals should be in the budget and what should be out? Tell us by liking and sharing up front on Facebook. And the budget negotiations continue in Madison this week. GOP leadership in the state Senate and Assembly will work to find the votes needed to pass the announced funding deal for the new Bucks Arena, and they'll have to decide whether to move the proposal as part of the budget or as an amendment or a separate bill. For up-to-the-minute coverage of the arena deal, check out the budget blog by our editorial partner, WisPolitics.com. Later on up front, he was President Obama's top campaign strategist, David Axelrod, on what happened to hope and change, Hillary Clinton's potential Achilles heel, and how voters will test Governor Walker in his bid for the White House. But first, the next generation of police officers. With police facing growing criticism, why these new officers are answering the call to protect and serve.
Up Front with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company.